All right, folks, it is 7 o'clock, so I would like to call this meeting of the Hartford Charter Revision Commission meeting on July 15th, 2021 to order. And if folks can go on mute until we get things going here, that'd be appreciated. We'll start first with item number 1, the roll call, and I will conduct that. James Wolf is here. Commissioner DeJesus.
Present.
Commissioner Gale.
Here.
Commissioner Aponte.
Here.
Commissioner Aralampalum.
Here.
Commissioner Bonifante. Commissioner Gallon Clark.
Present.
Commissioner Harrington.
Present.
Commissioner Kennedy. Commissioner Kowalishin. Commissioner Medina.
Present.
Commissioner Rivera. Commissioner Rubenstein.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
And Commissioner Kennedy, I see that you are now present as well. We have a quorum. Before we move to public comment, we have a special guest with us this evening. We have Councilman Nick LeBron, and the councilman has another something else going on at the same time, so we're going to skip ahead to him and allow him to speak and address the commission as the other members of council have done. He will be afforded 5 to 10 minutes to provide his thoughts on the charter revision process. So I will turn it over to you, Councilman LeBron. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me, Commissioner, and thank you to you, Commissioner, and everybody at the Charter Review Commission for your time, energy, and effort that you're taking towards this charter review process. We all know that it is an important process. We all know that local politics matter the most. And so, again, thank you for your volunteerism towards this efforts. I wanted to take the time tonight to talk to everyone today, not only about the things that I hold near and dear to myself, but to also talk to you guys about, the belief of the power in the process. And so, we have a process and we have a structure, and it's important for us to follow those things. I know Commissioner Wolf has done a fantastic job up until this point. I've seen some charter review meetings. I haven't seen all of them. And so they seem to be managed well. And thank you, Commissioner Wolf, for that. First, I want to start just a couple things that I hold near and dear to myself. The first thing is the community voice and the importance of community voice, including youth voice. And so oftentimes at our boards and commissions, we see the same people over and over. And the reason for that is because it tends to be a certain archetype. It's a type of person who has the time to do it. It's the type of person that can afford to do it. And it's the type of person that can be connected to it. Now, mind you, the folks that volunteer at these boards and commissions, they're all volunteers, but the people that run them are being paid. Excuse me, I'm actually outside. It's pretty hot outside, so you might see a little bit of sweat. But nonetheless, the people that run these boards and commissions are being paid. But one of the things that I've learned over my time in politics and in community organizing is to have vested partners. And what I mean by vested partners is that there are people that want to be involved in local politics, but they have transportation barriers. They have childcare issues. And these things shouldn't be a block. This shouldn't block people from participating. We have to think of innovative ways for them to be fully vested partners in the process. So that way we can overcome childcare issues. We can overcome transportation issues, whether it's a gas card or a bus fare, or if it's a stipend for childcare, or even innovative process where I've seen community meetings where they had childcare on the premises. These things are important. I think it's important not to lay the structure per se, but to create an avenue so that we can build on it and maybe think about that in the future. The other thing that I want to point out is the Board of Education chairs. The Board of Education, I've heard a lot of people talk about the Board of Education and the importance of it and for folks to be involved in it. Let me say this. Right now, the relationship between the Board of Education and the City of Hartford, basically what we do at the City of Hartford is we cut checks. We rubber stamp items. They put things before us. They have a process in place. I'm not negating their process, but we need to think of ways so that we can interject ourselves on a city level. Yes, most of the funding comes to the Board of Education from the state. However, we can't just be a fiduciary pass-through. We have to have some fiduciary oversight. And so for me, I think looking at exploring possibilities to have people assigned to the Board of Ed and committed to the Board of Ed that are assigned or selected by council, I think is important. You know, how that looks right now, the mayor has 5 and then there's 4 elected officials, I believe. We need to think about possibly adding some of those seats to the council to provide it, some of those selections to the Board of Ed. So that way we can have some influence and some possibilities and kind of ear to what's going on with our Board of Education process. The last thing I'll hold you with, I know you guys have a long meeting, is, you know, I know there are some polarizing topics such as, you know, HPD, there's probably zoning and districting, you know, and I'm sure those are going to create lively debates. One of the things that I would just recommend for everyone is that folks focus on incrementalism. You know, there's a social change psychologist by the name of Kurt Lewin, and he talks about change theory. And what happens is if you don't take approaches with incrementalism, and you try to make dramatic changes, there's a tendency for the change to revert back to the original space because it's too radical, or the thought process, it's too impactful. And so, you know, whatever you guys decide or wherever you guys think, I think there should be a cognizance and intentionality around incrementalism. So those are just my thoughts. And thank you very much for everyone here. I'm going to go back inside in the AC, and thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, guys. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilman LeBron. We appreciate your comments, and we will incorporate them into our issue tracker that we have and that we're working on tonight. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Peace to everyone. All right, bye.
All right, on to our next portion of the meeting. We're going to go to public comment. So I will read the rules for the public comment, and then we'll start calling on individuals. So the public comment portion of our meeting will be conducted in accordance with the following procedures. Each person wishing to address the commission shall, upon recognition by the chair, provide their name, address, and if they represent a group, they must state for the record the name and address of said group or organizations, and shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes. All remarks shall be addressed to the commission as a body and not to any individual member. Any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, or who becomes boisterous while addressing the commission, may be barred by the chair from further participation at this meeting unless permission to remain is granted by 2/3 vote of the commission members present and voting. And during the public comment portion of tonight's meeting, there shall be no debate by the commission, although questions may be asked by commissioners to members of the public through the chair. And with that, I will recognize Vicky Fennell, who has been waiting patiently. Vicky, you have the floor, and I will start the timer for 3 minutes now.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to and residents to comment. And also thank you very much to the commissioners for your service on this very important project. I know when I first showed up to the first charter revision meeting, there were a lot of suggestions, and briefly I am definitely in favor of one thought that was put forth with the mayor being elected the same time as the president of the United States. Presidency is important, but we also tend to get very high turnout. I know it was mentioned that there would be no city council elected at that time. I'm definitely in favor of that. Have the city council be independent, running again with the 7 neighborhood representatives at large. And also, I think there was mentioned that 4 would be at large and then 7 would be district by the neighborhoods. And I like that concept. Board of Education also very important, but I think the mayor should be allowed to appoint maybe 2 or 3, with 6 being elected by the voters. The other piece that I think is very interesting and maybe a little bit controversial, but I think we should have the ability to have a recall provision for our local officials, particularly the mayor, whoever it is. I've done a little research on this. I know that at the state level, there's an organization called the National Conference of State Legislatures, which was founded in 1975. Several states allow the recall of local officials. Connecticut is not one of them at this time. Some of the grounds that have been used in other states have been neglect, malfeasance, incompetence, and a host of others. My feeling is that I don't think we should wait 4 years to realize that the person elected is not competent. We need, or is neglecting his duties, or, he may be involved in criminal activity. I hope not. But I think the city we need a mechanism in the charter, perhaps with a list of triggers to force a recall vote. I know that the state has done some research reports that are online as far back as 2003, where they've tried this to amend the Constitution to allow recall of elected officials. And a lot of them don't even make it out of the legislative committee. So, I know that there's, through this national conference of state legislators, perhaps there could be some, you could seek out additional information, or maybe do a little research as far as how that would be working for us in a municipal situation. So other than that, those are my comments at this point. So that's it. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak.
You came in right about 3 minutes, so thank you very much, and we appreciate the comments. Next up,
thank you.
You're very welcome. Next up, we have Leslie Hammond. Leslie, you're on the Zoom, so I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak if that's something that you wanted to do. If you're just observing, then feel free to hang out and continue watching. Oh, it looks like you're muted.
Thank you so much. I really wanted to hear what other public people had to say. I'm not sure if people knew you had public comment tonight. I just happened to have seen it on the agenda. So, I really hope more public people can come, and I hope you have public meetings so public people will come. City Hall seems to be really dragging their feet about public meetings, which is very disturbing to me for our democracy. So I think that would really help to get more feedback from people. But I made my comments last time, and I was hoping to see more young people because, of course, they just have such wisdom. But thank you for calling on me.
Absolutely. And I did want to address the issue of public meetings or meetings in person. So this will be our last meeting via Zoom for the foreseeable future. Hopefully, we have the function room reserved at City Hall going forward. And so our next meeting in August will be in the function room. It will be a fully in-person meeting, and I'll continue to monitor the ability of the city to operate hybrid meetings going forward. And if that's something that is going to work out for us, then we may switch to hybrid. But for now, after this meeting, we will be transitioning to in-person. So thank you for reminding me of that. up next on our agenda, we have the approval of the minutes from July 21st, 2021. With one, and I will, I'll entertain a motion. And I believe the one change that will be made in the record was that there was a mistake. Commissioner Aponte was recorded as absent, and he was in fact here at that meeting. Are there any other? First, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
The motion's been made and properly seconded. Any discussion? Besides the fact that Commissioner Aponte was present, and that will be noted in the minutes. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. All right, on to the meat of the evening. So I hope everyone has their issue tracking chart that we sent around a couple of days ago. And this process that we're going to go through tonight, I think it will be relatively quick. We're going to take a look at all of the things that have been proposed up to this point, and then flag them as items needing substantial due diligence, items that need to be researched and reported, which is something that that Attorney Mednick can probably take care of. Without substantial due diligence would be something to the effect of having a panel discussion or bringing in some type of other experts or doing some real deep dive research on an issue. And then finally, we can flag an item as needing relevance discussion. So these are items that we may not want to cover at this time or are outside of the purview of the Charter Revision Commission. So if we want to start with the first section in the issue tracking chart, we can take a look at the preamble, and I'll just walk through it, guys, and folks. And if anyone has a comment, they can just feel free to raise their hand or to signal to me that you want to make a comment, and then I'll recognize you to speak on the issue that we're discussing. And Steve, feel free to interrupt me at any point if you think there needs to be additional comments. So the preamble, we discussed updating that. I think that's something that we can all agree on, and I'm most likely going to take a look at appointing a subcommittee to take a look at that and to throw around ideas and then present it to the commission as a whole. So if that's something that you're interested in getting involved in, feel free to reach out to me offline. The next section was Chapter 1, Incorporation and Boundaries. There were no issues there, so we can skip that. Chapter 2, Powers of the City. There's in Section 3, there was an issue raised with benefit assessments. In Section 5, there was an issue raised with powers to adopt regulatory ordinances. And then there was the concept of inserting definitions into our charter. Those were all raised by the Corp Council. And if no one disagrees, I think those are all research and report items that Attorney Mednick can take a look at and send over to us for suggestions and then debate at a later time. So does anyone have issues with that?
No.
All right, and just so everyone knows, this should be a pretty quick meeting because there aren't many sections of the charter. So Section 3, or Chapter 3 rather, elections. Under election form reforms, we have the voting age should be lowered. We have a bullet on staggered elections, a bullet on nonpartisan elections being something we should look at, ranked choice voting, and publicly financed campaigns. So besides staggered elections, the other issues are not within our purview. That said, the commission could take the step of sending a letter to the GAE committee and the leadership within the General Assembly to request that legislation be taken up to adopt a special act to address those issues. And if that's something that folks are interested in, I think that makes sense. But otherwise, probably doesn't make sense to spend a significant amount of time working on something that we can't really address within our power as a Charter Revision Commission.
I have a question for you for clarification, Chair.
Sure.
So you're saying that the staggered elections is not within our purview? Is that what you're saying?
It is within our purview.
It is within our purview.
So that would
So
be the
what-
one item that we can consider, and that
Okay.
would be considered as we discuss council elections, mayoral elections, Board of Education, and whatever other posts that we consider for being elected. But the other ones would be
Okay,
outside.
which item were you saying that if we thought it was significant, maybe there could be some additional research?
So the voting age being lowered,
Okay,
nonpartisan elections, ranked choice voting, and publicly financed campaigns.
okay,
So the four of those issues are outside of our purview, but if we want to reach out to the General Assembly, the Hartford delegation, the chairs of the Government Administration and Elections Committee, which has oversight over those issues, and then potentially leadership. Steve, have folks done that in the past? Other charter revision commissions when there's an issue that's outside of the?
Yeah, we've done that many times. Most recently, a few weeks ago in Bristol, we've reached out to the legislature because they have a recall provision that they adopted, which is quite a pertinent subject. The fact that it was just raised at the public hearing, and they have a in their charter, the local town attorney, the corporation council, and I have both ruled that it is illegal in Connecticut. And we asked the state senator, who thought we should enforce it, whether it was enforceable or not, to pass legislation. So the city council in Bristol has recently, and the mayor called on the state legislature to legalize something in their charter that right now has no legal basis. So that is something you can do. Or if you determine, for example, on public financed elections, New Haven has them, but they have them under a pilot. You might, if you determine that that's a direction you'd like to take, you might move on that on an early stage. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, and see if we can get some action from the legislature early in the session.
Yeah, and before I call on Commissioner Medina, I would caution the folks that although the Charter Revision Commission does have a significant amount of power within the city to consider, how we can change the charter, when we start thinking about our political capital up at the state legislature, it is going to be pretty limited. So an idea like publicly financed elections, for example, that exists in New Haven, that may be more palatable and less of a heavy lift than something like lowering the voting age. So as a commission, as we think about weighing what it is that we want to reach out to the General Assembly on, keep that in mind. Commissioner Medina.
I was thank you. That I think that addresses a question that I had. And really, it was about really a question for Attorney Mednick. I'm aware of a variety of charters, the city charters across Connecticut that have one provision or another that really don't function because state law wouldn't allow it to. So the question, I think, is both a strategic question, but also kind of gaming the issue of like how we get closer to successfully doing something to lower the voting age. If we didn't include it in our charter this time around, we would have to wait 10 years to address that issue again, or I'm thinking no. So would it be like a city council could pass an ordinance that would lower it?
No, you don't. You're in a 10-year review process that was created, I think, in 2002. I usually recommend that communities put a review process in their charter because one charter I did 10 years ago hadn't been reviewed in 40 years. And so the 10-year review is a local decision that you should not go more than 10 years without looking at your charter. Use Bristol as an example again. Bristol's run 2 or 3 charter revisions in the last 3 years. And what they sometimes do is they tackle an issue. So I will very often recommend that if we cannot get to an issue, let's say it comes up late in the process and we just don't have the time for due diligence, one of the things you might do in your report is you might recommend to the city council that they consider doing some due diligence outside the context of a charter revision and look into an issue outside the charter revision. And they conclude that it requires a charter revision, put together a commission to deal with that issue. You can't strictly focus a charter commission, but you can make it clear politically to a charter commission as a city council, if you bring anything else back, we're not going to deal with it. We just want to deal with this one issue. So you can do that. You don't have to wait 10 years.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, can I add something, Chair?
Commissioner DeJesus, yes.
So, Steve, Attorney Steve Letnick, we've actually tried to use a recall elections back in 2015. At that point, I think it was Vasquez versus Court of Common Council. That was with the debacle of the Registrar of Voters office where there was miscommunication. And the council tried to remove the Registrar of Voters. Actually, I think we did all 3. We tried, and the Superior Court judge ruled that we didn't have the power based on the charter. So I think it'll be helpful if we can add that information for those who may still have some curiosity as to why we're not able to do that, because actually he ruled against the Court of Common Council from doing that.
I'd let this. I haven't muted.
This was April. Is either April of 2015. I don't know if he ruled around that time or it was in August. I'm trying to remember.
And what was the name of the case?
Vasquez versus Court of Common Council.
Hugo Vasquez versus the City of Hartford
Yep.
Court of Common Council.
Was that case brought under the removal provisions in the charter?
Yes.
Brought as recall.
That's right.
It was brought under the removal provisions of the charter.
And the court denied the ability of the town to use those removal provisions?
That's correct.
That's right.
Oh, that's interesting, because I had not heard about that ruling.
It was can't remember. I think it was a motion for it was a motion, and I'm not even sure they had a full-blown trial. Motion from Olga's counsel basically saying we were acting beyond our authority. I think that's what the ruling was. I mean, it's been some time ago, and I only glanced at the case. I did not read it in full as to the reasoning. I remember Corey Brinson and I had a good laugh over it because I told Corey, he was nuts for even bringing representing his client, who was a Republican Register of Voters. And none of us expected that that ruling from the judge.
I'll take a look at it because it's because I've been saying to people it's a Superior Court ruling. Maybe that's why I missed it.
Yes.
But
we did not appeal it. At that point, we
right.
finished out our term.
We ended up settling. I think we settled out, and that's how we were able to dispose of the Registrar of Voters at that time.
I want to look at that case because I have 2 charters. One of them is putting a removal provision in, and because we've had no adverse case law in Connecticut, I want to take a look at that case to see if
you might want to ask the state treasurer because he was the kind of the lead for counsel on that removal provision. Sean probably has a real good memory of it.
I will call Sean. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Commissioner, go ahead. Commissioner.
Thank you. I brought up the issue about public financed elections with respect to New Haven. I remain positive for it. I think it's a wonderful idea. It puts everybody on an equal playing field. It wouldn't take much of our time. It would be a letter and follow up to GAE at the state legislature, and probably we could depend on the chair or council to monitor the process of GAE with respect to amending the pilot to include Hartford. I think it would be a fairly easy sell, and I think it would do wonderfully for our democracy. Secondly, I'm also in favor, certainly of ranked choice voting. And once again, that would be, I think, an easy sell, not as easy as fixing the pilot for public finance elections, but fairly easy. And it would go through, once again, GAE. And once again, I think the chair and the council could monitor it. It wouldn't take much time of the commission, wouldn't take much logistical work, and I think it would do wonders for our democracy. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein. And I don't think we're going to be voting on anything this evening with regards to what steps we're going to take, but that position is noted, and I think I saw a lot of heads nodding along with you. So, so thank you for that. The rest of the elections section, it looks to me as if they were mostly the recommendations came from Corp Counsel.
Correct.
So Steve, I think these would all be research and report, unless anyone disagrees.
I do have a question for clarification.
Sure.
It's section 2 for the register of voters and constables, and it says no need for professional management of the office. Can I just get a little bit more clarification about what that means, no need for professional management?
Steve?
That was the registrar's testimony. The registrar didn't think there was need for professional management. That's not a conclusion other than this document reflects positions that people took. There's contradictory provisions, positions within the document. If you look at the footnote, I think you'll find that that was the registrar's testimony.
Yes.
If I can add to that, through Chair.
Sure.
Okay, so that comes about during that same case. What ended up happening was we wanted to do away with the register of voters back in 2015. What ended up happening is we wanted to get a provision. I think it was now House Speaker was going to introduce a bill to have Hartford have only one register of voters to do the work. That failed in committee. And the movement back then was to have one professional register of voters, not elected, but hired, was the idea. And I think that is what she may be referencing when she says professionalizing the register of voters. So not being an elected official, being someone who is appointed and there to retirement, I guess.
Thank you, Commissioner DeJesus. So the conclusion there then is that there would need to be some type of legislative action for there to be a professionalized registrar of voters anyways. And then I think our current registrar is saying she does not want us to support a special act or proposing a special act to go through with that. That's what it seems.
But through the chair, just make sure we verify that. But I'm almost
Sure.
of the opinion that that's what my understanding at that point was.
Yes, Commissioner Gale.
Yeah, let me jump in here. I do think that state law actually does allow for something different than the current setup. There was some changes that were made, so I don't think we need to jump to the conclusion right now that professionalizing the office is off the table because it requires legislative action. I believe there is legislation that allows for a different type of registrar setup than Hartford currently has. And so I think that should just be looked at first to see what are all the options for registrar's office. I don't want us to just walk away from that concept. I think former Councilman DeJesus, I think you guys were actually successful in getting some state law changes. You weren't successful at implementing them, but here we are. We may have that opportunity.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Gale. And Attorney Mednick, I imagine you'll take note of that and we'll take a look at that.
It's on my list. Gotcha.
Thank you very much. All right. If there's no objection, we can move on to chapter 4, which is the Court of Common Council. And the first bullet is stronger city council, including, and then there's a list of bullets under there. I think this all needs substantial due diligence. As we've discussed at our last meeting, I think this seems like there's a general consensus that we need to take a look at the how to strengthen the city council, and all of these items are issues that Attorney Mednick would take a look into. And Steve, do you want to just provide some insights onto how you guide other charter commissions or charter revision commissions through discussions such as strengthening the council or changing its powers, so on and so forth?
Yeah, there's a variety of issues that are raised here that range from professional staffing to committee structures to general authority and powers. You may ultimately look into budget authority, which is one of the principal authorities for the council. And so what we would do is take a look at, this is getting into the structure of the council at this point in terms of districts versus non-districts. That's a separate issue. What I would recommend is that I would try to give you a comparative chart to show you what other cities roughly the size of Hartford. I would probably do the top 10 or top 12 or 15 municipalities in Connecticut to show you. I won't put RTM towns in there, of course. I'll just do the governments that are structured to the city of Hartford to give you a sense of what other communities have in their government structures, in their charters. Secondly, I usually would put together a panel discussion. I would invite people from around the state who have experience in each of these areas to talk about how they do this in Stamford, how they do it in New Haven, how they do it in Bridgeport or Waterbury or Danbury or any of the other municipalities in Connecticut. That would give you an opportunity in real time to go back and forth and really kind of roundtable discussions, especially when we get back into a live setting and you're sitting in a room with your sleeves rolled up. It would be a really a good opportunity. Those are very, very important sessions. And then you can begin to hone in on things. And as you begin to hone in on them, then we start talking about what you're interested in and whether it's feasible, whether it might work in your community. Because one of the things that I always say to charter commissions and council members is you can accept almost anything you want. You could put almost any structure in place. And the question is whether the culture of your community will adhere to the culture of the community. And I think the point about incrementalism was actually a very interesting point. I've never quite expressed it that way, but you need to be careful about how you deal with your institutions and your structures as you begin to move in a different direction. But having all these folks at your disposal, and they've been, most members are pretty willing to do that. And I'm sure I'll call on Chairman Wolf and other members of this commission 2 years from now or 3 years from now to come to another town and talk about what we did in Hartford in 2021, 2022. But that's what I would do, kind of give you a comparative analysis, and it would end up with a meeting with various practitioners from around the state. And there might be some professionals. Joe DeLong is very often willing to speak, who has a pretty good global sense of what the state looks like, and that's what we would do.
Great, thank you. And these specific issues we can tee up for the individuals that'll be coming in, so we'll make sure they're addressed. And all the viewpoints are taken in on the various issues listed here under the Stronger City Council. Staggered terms for I think that is one of the things we're going to take a look at under elections. We discussed that before, but that is within our purview. And
James, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Is that just my computer? Is there anyone else?
No, I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah,
Same thing here.
Me too.
Sorry, everybody. I'm on a different.
Good, it's not just me.
So the next bullet item is creating staggered terms for the Common Council. We discussed that before under the elections section or chapter rather. We'll be taking a look at that. And then next two bullet items on this page were proposed by the Corp Council. So considered things that we would research and report. On to the next page. The removal of officers and power of investigation. We just discussed that. So that's something that we will certainly be taking a look at. And then the next bullet, section 4C, town and city clerk appointment and duties. There's the provision that says that the clerk should serve for an indefinite term, and the Corp Counsel's office suggested that we take a look into that because it would be changing the term for someone like the clerk who has a very important role in the city. I think that's worthy of more than just a research and report that probably rises to the level of substantial due diligence. Does anyone disagree on that?
No.
Okay. And then reviewing the operations of the town and city clerk, I think that's something that could also take place during that conversation as well. The next bullet point is the composition of the council. I think it goes without saying that this is substantial due diligence, and Steve, I'm guessing we'll put together a comparative analysis on this and bring in practitioners as well. And there may be two separate conversations. The composition of the council.
Just like to add real quick that we might want to have 9 at large and 6 districts. I think Steve, you had it the other way. So just in terms of the composition, in terms of the notes. Just wanted to put that in the, not that it's that important at this stage.
I see what you're saying.
Sorry if I got it wrong, but at this point, it doesn't make a huge difference. We'll play with those numbers at some point.
At this point, it doesn't matter. Just wanted to put that in there for the record. That's all.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. Under the bullet, section 7, procedures for enacting ordinances, resolutions, and other legislative enactments. This has to do with advertising ordinances. I think it has to do with the posting things in papers, in newspapers, and folks would like to post things online, maybe on the city website. I think that I just wanted to flag that for relevance discussion, Steve. I don't know if that's a state statute that would need to be changed or whether we have the ability to do that in the charter or by ordinance. So we may want to look into that, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. There are some ordinances, some statutes that require newspaper publication. For example, a charter needs to be published in a newspaper, but I'll check generally with regard to ordinances. It might have changed.
Yes, Commissioner Gale.
Yeah, I would think that the state would set minimum standards for notice, but that we could always increase notice. And I see Attorney Mednick shaking his head yes. So I don't think we could go below the minimum standards, but I doubt that that's what anybody's interested in. Probably interested in providing mechanisms for more notice.
Yep. Okay. On to page 5, still under chapter 4, the Court of Common Council. Those were all, the rest of these, besides the statement that there should be a more deliberative process, which was made by Councilwoman Surgeon. All these proposed changes came from the Corp Council, and I think would be flagged as research and report. Steve.
On the first one, I think I mentioned this when Howard testified, when the Corp Council testified. there are different categories, and we can play around with them a little bit. I've in one of my charters, it's the only one I've done it in so far, we have ordinances which are laws. They're the equivalent of a local statute. Resolutions are more congratulatory. You can do orders. And then there's another category that I call statutory resolutions. There are resolutions that are adopted by the council because the statute requires them to adopt a resolution. It simply is like a corporate resolution, the equivalent of a corporate resolution. And I have gotten one of my communities to look at distinguishing that from a normal resolution and treat it more like an ordinance, because it usually means you're applying for state funds or federal funds. And so I do have some thoughts on that we can play with. So I can present those to you.
Okay. And just for the benefit of the commission, you usually, with these research and report items, do you typically put together an omnibus report, or you chip away at them and update us at every meeting? How do you typically do it?
Well, I think what we're going to do is, I think you'll probably let us know that what we're going to do is begin to lay out a schedule. What I will do is I'll lay out all these reports on a piece of paper, and I will try to place them into our schedule so that for as many, if I can get as many as I can in at various meetings, I will do that, try to knock them out in a systematic way. And one of the things we may determine by doing this is that there might be more due diligence beyond the knowledge that we gain on what the statute looks like. And you may come back to me and say, is that our only alternative? Can we move in another direction? So when we lay out our schedule, Mr. Chairman, I'll make sure that I begin to plot these out, and I want to try to deal with them on the earlier side. I don't want to wait till next May or April, just in case there are other things that they would lead to. So I'll try to achieve them in the next few weeks, early months of this enterprise.
Great, thanks. I think that's helpful for everyone else.
Yeah.
All right, on to Chapter 5, the mayor. The first bullet, the move from the strong mayor to the city manager form of government. This was a suggestion from a member of the public. There seems to be a general consensus among the commissioners that opening up the strong mayor city manager conversation again is something that probably isn't something we should, a road that we should go down during this charter revision commission process, but I wanted to put that out on the floor for comment. If not, we can obviously discuss it during the powers of the council conversation, and I'm sure it'll come up the history and why Hartford moved from city manager to strong mayor during the kind of the, as we just get a sense of the history of the charter revision process here in Hartford. But let me open it up for comments to see if anyone has any different ideas about that.
Sorry, through the chair.
Yes.
For the report, it has nothing to do with the question you just asked, but the blue column with the black lettering is very hard for me to follow because of the contrast, dark blue with that black lettering. So whoever is doing these reports again, if they can use like a white there with a dark color, because these are using dark color with a blue color, it's terrible to follow it on my iPad, and it's really hard to follow. Let me see if you can see it there. Look at that.
I'll fix it on the screen. It works beautifully on the screen, but I'm trying to follow it on a hard copy, and it's horrible. So
right. White lettering may be best.
Done.
Sorry about that.
You don't even.
I printed it out grayscale.
All right.
Made it big.
I'll fix it.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, so we will.
Commissioner?
Yes.
I apologize.
Mr. Smith.
Are you saying that we're not going to discuss that, the mayor, or is that something that you think we're just going to discuss in passing? I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you were saying here. You're breaking up with me.
I think it would be, it seems like the consensus is that's something that we wouldn't spend a significant amount of time on, because the city kind of went through that process of debating that 20 years ago. And it seems to me like folks are comfortable with the strong mayoral form of government, but I wanted to put it out to the commission to see if that's a fair assumption on my end. If folks want to have a conversation about city manager, this is your opportunity to let us know that some other form.
I mean, I would like for us to at least have a conversation about it. I don't know that it necessarily be something that we would vote on to change, but if a member of the public brought it to our attention and think it's something that we should do, we should at least have a conversation and let them hear why we believe that the current system works. I don't think we should just, ignore it.
I echo that same sentiment, and I don't think we've heard it from enough people from the public to make that conclude, to come to the conclusion that we don't need to spend a lot of time on this.
Yeah. I mean, and James, you're showing your age here a little bit. It was actually the time we passed strong mayor form of government. That was at least the third charter reform. There had been Kerry Saxon Perry had tried to amend it, Mike Peters as well, I believe, and Eddie Perez actually, the first strong mayor, was actually one of those charter revision commissioners to actually, and I think his approach failed, I think, at one point. So I think it's a good discussion to have, particularly in balance with respect to the powers of the city council, because I think a lot of this is coming from the frustration, at least what I hear, and not having a legislative body that appears at least to be independent of the mayor. I mean, and that's a professional discussion, but I don't think it hurts to have the discussion, particularly in light of some of the other changes we're contemplating. Can't hurt.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this discussion. I came in knowing that I wanted to switch back to a strong, to the strong city manager. And in conversations that I've had with people and in issues that people have brought up about strengthening the council and having that be this place that gives us more of a check and balance, I'm interested in hearing more about that. And I want to hear more of the conversation. Thank you for bringing that up, Raul.
Go into some substantial due diligence on that issue. So thank you for letting me know, everyone. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Rubenstein.
Thank you. In line with that, with the article, and I think it'll be a matter of strict due diligence, I proposed the other day that our council look into every board and commission in which only the mayor has appointment power and the council has none. So this will affect both branches of government. And I feel strongly it's something that needs to be changed. For instance, on the Ethics Commission, the mayor, there's 5 members, and the mayor has the right to select all 5. And there are other boards and commissions similarly situated. So what I've suggested for our council is that he research and bring us a list of the boards and commissions that there's that kind of imbalance for our consideration moving forward.
Okay, I think that's something we can do. Thanks, Commissioner. All right, and then the next issue, I think we're going to have, along with the move from the strong mayor to city manager form of government, retaining the strong mayor balance with stronger council was also another suggestion. So that will be part of that conversation. And then the next bullet, section 4, temporary absence of disability. That was something proposed by the Corp Council. So that would be something that Attorney Mendick could research and report on. All right, moving on to section 6, the treasurer's provisions. Do you want to update folks on what you've done with the treasurer's provisions thus far?
Yes, yeah, happy to do so. So prior to the appointment of the Charter Commission, I was working with the Treasurer's Office the early part of the year with Attorney Silvestri from that office. For a number of years, I've been recommending that we take a look at the Special Act provisions at the back of the Charter. We actually segregated them out of the Charter a few years ago with an eye on actually eliminating most of those provisions, because 20 years ago, there might have still been a few people who were covered by some of the pension provisions, but right now it's been determined that there is nobody covered by any of the pension provisions that were adopted in 1898 or 1937 or 1945. And so we're going to be recommending at a scheduled evening that we move to repeal or eliminate special act provisions from the charter, from the body of the charter, so that they will no longer encumber the document. Because there's still, if you have to print out the document, they still would be part of the charter document. There are a few provisions in there dealing with the pension commission that may need to be incorporated in the body of the document. And so one of the things I've recommended with chapter 6 is, which is now called other elected offices. The only other elective office in that chapter is the Registrar of Voters, which is also dealt with earlier in the charter. And my recommendation is going to be that we just move the registrar out of this chapter and make this chapter all about the treasurer and the pension obligations of the community, because a big chunk of the treasurer's function is the pension. And so I will be talking about trying to consolidate all those provisions dealing with the pension commission, other pension requirements, and the requirements of the treasurer's office in this chapter dedicated to the treasurer and pension functions. So we will sit down and work out a schedule, and we'll come in with a concrete proposal for you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Thank you. Through you to council. Steve, so what you're talking about then would be that the treasurer would have their own article within the charter?
Yeah, correct.
And secondly, you must have heard Treasurer Cloud mention that treasurership has no distinct role within the budget process, and he was encouraging us to find a way to get the treasurer involved in the budgetary negotiations on the premise that there are three branches of government: the legislative, which is the council, the mayor, and the treasurer.
Well, that would probably be addressed when you get to the budget provision, as opposed to this chapter. And if a power was created, you might delineate it in the treasurer's chapter. But that would be putting the cart in front of the horse. I think we should consolidate the present powers. Then let's see what other powers are developed, if any, through this process. I'd be curious to see what he thinks the treasurer should do in the budget process.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
It would be a unique opportunity. That's it for me on that.
Okay. Any other comments on chapter 6? A lot of the other suggestions were from Corp Counsel and from Attorney Mednick. All right, chapter 7, boards and commissions. So we have a suggestion that boards and commissions be elected by voters, that we shift the balance of power. There should be council appointments to boards and commissions. And I think this is kind of sounds exactly like what Commissioner Rubenstein was just describing. And this is it's a significant issue, and we'll probably need to provide some substantial due diligence on that and take a look at what other communities do with regards to appointing boards and commissions, and then get a list of all the members of the boards and commissions here in Hartford. There's also taking a look at the conflict of interest in the Internal Audit Commission, and taking a look at the tax abatement committee membership. Those would all probably, those conversations will all probably take place during an actual meeting of the commission, and Attorney Mednick could put together reports as needed for our notification. On to the next page, taking a look at diversity on boards and commissions. That's something that Attorney Mendick can research and report on. I believe there has been some action on that in California at the state level. I'm not sure if there's been action on that at the municipal level or county level elsewhere, but I'm sure we can take a look at that.
We're, if I may, Mr. Chairman, we're literally in Hamden and in Middletown adopting provisions, Hamden much more robust provisions on diversity requirements for boards, not only racial and religious and the protected classes and all that, but also on the basis of geography within a community. I've done no research in Hartford on this, but I'll bet you Councilman Gale might have a better sense of this. If you look at boards and commissions, you'll find that there's a lot of maldistribution of people who serve on boards and commissions. And Hamden's trying to remedy that through a series of charter provisions. And so we've just been working on that pretty diligently for the last 10 months.
Great. We'll have a head start. Commissioner DeJesus, did you have a question?
I do. For the Tax Abatement Commission committee, that one, I remember at one point we had a large budget for that, for litigation, especially when we had revals and all that good stuff. Is there a way that we can get some data on the litigation costs for those tax abatements that they don't settle in committee and eventually go to Superior Court? I would like to get a 5-year projection of where we are with that, because I know that has some significant budgetary numbers there that were pretty high.
I'm sure that's something Corp Counsel could probably put together. All right. The next bullet item after diversity on boards and commissions is about creating a police commission and addressing police oversight. And that kind of dovetails with some of the other police related issues in the next chapter, chapter 8. And so to the extent that we're discussing public safety and police, I think all of the bullet points in here will need to be addressed either through a report, through Attorney Mednick, or through a conversation with experts and a panel that Attorney Mednick can put in. Steve, do you want to discuss what you've done in other municipalities on this issue? Because it's a hot button issue that's come up in other places.
Well, one of the stars of the panel seems to be gone. Commissioner Medina has actually participated in a panel on police reform in which is the community we've had the most robust activity, and it was largely of a shooting that occurred 2 years ago, and so they've done very significant. In fact, we're finishing up the revision of what I think is really one of the most robust reforms of a police commission in Connecticut, at least, and it's also a police commission that is covered, that is in the collective bargaining agreement. So they are currently the disciplinary body. And so it'll be interesting to see how the 21st century police models will meet when they meet with the collective bargaining agreement. So it's going to be very interesting. So we're just finishing that debate. My hope is on August 2nd, the council will approve it and the voters will approve it in November. That's the community I've been most deeply involved in on that issue. And I do over the last 2 years, I have to say, because of the unfortunate shooting in our town, built together a very good group of resources throughout Connecticut, but also throughout the nation, in helping us move in the direction of police reform and the creation of a police commission. Keep in mind, though, what I just said at the beginning, the Hamden Commission has been in the collective bargaining agreement. And so a police commission we're going to create in Hartford will hopefully have a mayor who will ultimately negotiate a role for them in discipline and into the collective bargaining agreement, but they're not in the collective bargaining agreement. So they'll probably be more involved in regulatory activity, hopefully with the chief and other administrative oversight functions, but will not necessarily play a role in discipline no matter what we say in the charter. We can say that if permitted, or if, that we view them as a disciplinary body, so long as that is consistent with the collective bargaining agreement. The problem is those agreements trump our local provisions. So we could have some aspirational language for them, but they won't quite be where you want them to be. But we can certainly bring in a number of people that, and you have a resource on your commission who we have used in one of the other communities I work in, and between Commissioner Medina and myself, we have a real strong group of relationships that we can bring to some really robust discussion on this issue.
Non-police issues or things not directly related to the putting together a police commissioner, changing oversight per se. We have a bullet that it's the first bullet under Chapter 8 for residency requirements for department heads and police. Is this something that folks want to charter? It is a conversation that's happening now at the council level. I doubt, I would assume that if the council is weighing in on it right now and making decisions, that if the charter revision over their own suggestions.
I think you should at least have a discussion.
Okay.
I think they acted on that. Too.
They did take action on it. But if
I mean,
like to have a discussion about it.
And the opinions on it vary, depends on, who's there. The state statute issues along with that as well as to how far you can go and push that. Generally speaking, among the residents, residency requirements is always something that's supported greatly. Among the intellectual community and those outside Hartford, it's always something they absolutely hate. And so I just think it's a good conversation to have to see, one, do you want it? And two, how far can you go with residency requirements? And let's see what the council does. The council may go a lot farther than the commission's prepared to. And at that point, maybe you can see the point to the council, but it depends. I don't think we should just dismiss it at this point.
Okay. Looking at other creation of a transportation department. Oh, Commissioner Gale, you had a question?
I would just add to what Commissioner Kennedy said, that I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have. I would add a slightly different slant to it, which is just we need to think as a body when you want to give council and the mayor some ability to make change, and when you want them not to have the ability to make change. So, that particular example, if you put it in the charter, it removes flexibility from council. And that may be a worthy thing, but I think we all need to be cognizant of that. If you're going to remove flexibility from council and the mayor, you need to be doing so for a very good reason. And just to bring that home, and I think you alluded to it, just this week, council did in fact change the residency requirement. So we did agree that there are there are now 3 directorships for which the mayor can seek a waiver from council of the residency requirement, but only after having gone through a series of steps of showing major effort to try to find someone from Hartford to fill the position. Anyway, I just want to put in that the balance of flexibility versus no flexibility into that.
It depends, and when you put it in there anyway, sometimes people cheat and lie and do all that other stuff to say they live in Hartford when they really don't. I feel very strongly and passionately about residency, but let's have the discussion as to why maybe it's not appropriate in the charter.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Rubenstein.
In 1976, I was part of a small group of people advising Deputy Mayor Carbone to put together a residency requirement. So maybe it is time for this body to revisit it and at least have a discussion about it.
Okay. I think enough folks here that are in favor of that to want to start.
And through the chair, if I can make another request.
Yes, Commissioner.
keeping in going back to the tax abatement committee, is there a way that they can give us at least forecast for the past 5 years of the amount of tax abatements that they've awarded for that, at least for the past 5 years, to understand what's the threshold, if there's any thresholds or any other towns that have thresholds before it becomes an issue that the council addresses? Because I know some municipalities, after a certain amount, I know in the city is any contract after a certain amount needs to go to city council. The tax abatement committee, I don't know if they have a threshold how much they can award, but I would like to see at least the last 5 years, how many have they awarded? How many tax abatements have they awarded to the amount? Have they done in the past 5 years? That'll be interesting to find out.
Okay. And that's something we can request. Commissioner Medina suggested Department of Community Health should be elevated into the charter. I think that's something we can certainly consider as well under substantial due diligence.
Through the chair, one on the bullet point before that on the creation of the transportation department. Just wanted to elevate that not just Hartford, but New Haven and many other municipalities are dealing with the issue of pedestrian deaths. And part of the tension in addressing a more pedestrian friendly city is that often we're appealing to larger increases in police enforcement to enforce traffic laws. And I think that the power of a transportation department is that it could give you, under state statute, an alternative traffic enforcement agency that is addressing these issues and is a new agency not tied to issues of racial profiling and the legacy of discriminatory policing, especially in Hartford. And so I think there's significance there that can allow Hartford to have an advanced conversation on how we create a more walkable and safer city without relying on increased police enforcement by the creation of a transportation department and a non-sworn officer traffic enforcement.
Thank you for that perspective, Commissioner. Steve, do you have any insights on that? I don't want to put you on the spot.
I have not created a traffic department in any charter. They do, or transportation. There are traffic authorities and traffic departments in cities. There's certainly nothing to prevent it, but it would be something I'm sure I can handle, but it's not something I have done. The same thing is true of health. Most town health departments in their charters, they've not been looked at carefully over the years. And I think that Commissioner Medina's point in both areas is that these are not just bricks and mortar type infrastructure problems. These are human infrastructure problems, and those have not historically been addressed by charter, and they've not been historically addressed at all. The debate that's going on in Washington right now, so that could be a really good discussion. I'm sure there's plenty of folks that we can tap into for that.
Great. Okay, so Commissioner Medina, are you suggesting potentially having a full session on that?
I think we could combine the transportation and the health issues together, but yeah, I would like to see that.
On to the next page. I believe, with the exception of the third bullet point regarding the corporation council and having too much sway over the mayor and council, the other four bullets were suggestions from the corp council. Those would all be research and report items. And then with regard to the corp council, I think that's probably a conversation that may happen when we're considering the powers of the council versus the power of the mayor, and whether the council can have should hire their own attorney, something in that vein. Is that what you're kind of thinking about with regards to that, Steve?
I think that would make sense. This is a debate that took place in 2007. I think it was after Commissioner Ponte, well after Commissioner Ponte's time in court counsel. This was debated a number of years ago, and it was a time of much turmoil at the time it was debated. And so some of the issues were addressed. They were not addressed, I would say, in a scholarly way. Let's just put it that way. It was more of a raw political power discussion during that period of time. And so I think that I think it would make sense in the context of talking about professionalizing the council and the relationship between the administration. It would really fall well into that category, even though it's in one chapter. I think it would be well discussed in the context of the power equation between the mayor and the council.
I agree. Any other comments or suggestions? All right, moving on to chapter 9, the Board of Education. This would be another item that gets substantial due diligence, and I think in the same way that we discussed the role and the powers of the council and the makeup of the council, having significant number of reports relevant to the issues that have been raised with regards to the Board of Education here, as well as some conversations about the history of the Board of Education here in Hartford, and also some context about how other communities handle their Board of Education. I think that would be wise to tackle here with regards to these issues. I don't see anything like it should be taken off the table.
About, if I may, 8 years ago in Bridgeport, this was a massive subject when Mayor Finch was dealing with the role of mayors in boards of education. We also had this about 18 years ago here in Hartford. I don't remember a lot of study. Again, I think a political judgment was made when the transition was made. I know I did not put any panels together. In Bridgeport, we had multiple panels to discuss the various relationships, the various merits and demerits. I can go back and look and see if anybody's still alive from the panels that I had 8 years ago, and see if I can reconstitute and put some of them together. I had some really superb people from Brown and from CCNY and Hunter College that really were quite expert in these fields. They came into Bridgeport. We might, if we're in a hybrid situation, we might have a better shot at getting them on a hybrid. And hopefully by the time we do this, we will have capacity to do hybrid. But there are a lot of good resources out there for discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Rubenstein.
In the 90s, there was a lot of fighting and dysfunction in the Hartford School Board, causing the mayor in the 90s to request the state takeover of the educational system. And they had the takeover for a number of years and then turned it back, which led to discussions between the Charter Revision Commission then and the elected officials, and that's why they came up with the 5 and 4 scenario, the 5 being the mayor picks 5 and the 4 are elected. That's why they got to where they got to. But that was quite some time ago, and there's been no fighting whatsoever.
Okay, thank you for that. Commissioner Gale. Commissioner Gale, looks like you're frozen. Oh, how about now?
Am I unfrozen?
You're good.
Okay. I would just note that this year is a Board of Education election that will occur in November. And I think it would behoove us not to have we can have all the conversations we want about board, but we also ought to have a conversation about the board after the election so we can see what the results are of the public participation this year. Certainly something I mentioned early on in my comments was the real lack of participation among the public in our Board of Education, and something we might want to consider is how to address that. But anyway, just throw that in.
Thanks. That's a good point. The only other thing that we need to address in here, Steve, directly is, do you want to touch on the cooperation provisions, just so everyone knows what that section refers to? It's footnote 101. You're on mute.
I pushed the button, but it didn't work. And I'm trying to remember whether we have, I think it's new. I have placed into charters over the years what I call cooperation provisions that require boards of education to cooperate and to comply with all charter requirements that do not violate any statute, meaning they have to provide the council with all the budget information that the council would like to have, provide that to the mayor. The council doesn't have the ability to modify lines, but if the council wants to see their lines to justify their support for the bottom line, they have to do that. There's also case law that really states that for all purposes, even ethics for that matter, and procurement and whatnot, that boards of education are not separate entities. I mean, a regional school board is different, but if you're a single town board of education, you have to meet requirements of the charter. And so that's what I mean by that. I mean, I could provide you with, as one of my reports, some language that I have proposed that's been adopted in several charters throughout the state.
Great. I think
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Rubenstein.
In the charter itself right now, it says, and I think council will agree, it says with respect to the Board of Education, they're a Department of Education, which implies that they're part of the city government. And if he's done in perusing the case law and the decisions of Superior Appellate and Supreme Court, I think the conclusion would be that the Board of Education is not an entity by themselves, that they're part of the city government.
The Corporation Council raised, in fairness, and Corporation Council did raise a question about the reference to Department of Education. And at some point, we probably should have that discussion because it's not clear to me why they would not be viewed as a department of the municipality. I recognize there are unique features governed by statute, but the building inspector has provisions that are governed by statute that chain of command. It doesn't mean he or she is not a city employee. So I think it's a discussion worthy of having at some point in this process.
And just to follow up, the Board of Education presently, when there are allegations of fraud within their domain, and the Board of Education have a employee that's an inspector, and that inspector is inspecting their own people. So what you have is a Board of Education, with their allegations of fraud and impropriety, are investigating themselves on the premise that they are apart from the city and not a city agency. And I think that's wrong.
The Audit Commission doesn't have any jurisdiction or has not asserted jurisdiction?
No. They have been rebuffed. So I'd like to see language within the article that gives the Internal Audit Commission, and by way of disclosure, I am on the Internal Audit Commission, the authority to investigate any allegations of fraud within the Board of Education, so that they're not investigating themselves.
So noted. Thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein. Any other comments on Chapter 9? All right, we'll move to Chapter 10, General Fund and Capital Fund Budget Processes. I think this probably warrants substantial due diligence in having at least some kind of conversation about kicking out when approval of the budget take place is something that the majority leader brought, and I know has been echoed by a number of other members of council as well, as a concern that they have, and if we have any wiggle room around that. And I know, Steve, that you provided some comments at our last meeting, and unless someone disagrees, I think that's something we should take a look at, as well as the other bullet points in here. Any other questions and comments in chapter 10? All right, on to chapter 11. Taking a look into bonding. I think that's something that we can research and report on. And if there are, substantial bonding that need to be discussed, that, we can take that out into a full session if need be.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Rubenstein.
There is a provision within the bonding that allows a referendum if petitions are taken out with respect to a certain project whose market value, I believe, is $2 million or $3 million, something like that. And I think a certain percentage of the electorate would have to file petitions. In my going around and in talking to people, many, or some rather, would like to see a provision in which there's an automatic referendum that would save the city money and gives the people a chance to opine on any particular city projects of a sizable nature.
Okay. Any other comments on that? It's certainly something we can take a look at.
And through a chair,
Commissioner DeJesus.
with that did come up through some of that. He's probably picking up is from the stadium, from the baseball stadium. That provision did not apply. Don't know what the legal opinion was as to why it did not. I'm not sure if it was because it was being bonded or it was a lease. But it'll be great if Corporation Council can go through the files to find out why that provision did not work, and if necessary, what would they recommend that will be more effective? But more importantly, what was the legal opinion as to why a referendum was not applicable to that situation? I think that would be important to understand moving forward if we're going to look into that issue.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, and then on to chapter 12, which is the last one we'll discuss tonight. There was a suggestion that city employees and retirees should have a vote on the pension. Commissioner Gale?
And my apologies, Chair. Just a comment on the last one. Just a point of information. Since the 2015 election, the city of Hartford has not bonded a single dime in 5.5 years.
All right, thank you for that point of information. That's helpful. All right, on to the last section we'll discuss tonight, chapter 12, pensions. There was a discussion about city employees and retirees having a vote on the pension commission. That's something that we can take a look at. That may be consolidated into our conversation about the treasurer's office, depending upon how we chop things up with the calendar. And there was Attorney Mendick covered the issue of consolidation of the special act provisions. And that's everything from the tracker. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add before we wrap this process up? Great. All right. Well, thank you all. I think the next step for us is Attorney Mendick and I will, go through the updated tracker that he put together and try to put together a schedule, which we will send out to everyone. And we'll have a topic for the first few meetings. And if there need to be amendments or changes to the schedule based on, commissioner input, we'll certainly take that under advisement. For example, wasn't aware how strongly folks felt about the city manager conversation. So, that input was, very welcome, and input on the schedule going forward will be welcome as well. Other than that, I think that'll be it for this evening. So without further ado, I will
You want a motion to adjourn?
I would love a motion to adjourn. Sorry, it's been a long night, Commissioner Rubenstein.
Second.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.